Good afternoon. This is Andy Waits, or Andrew Waits, as is printed on the book, the novel I wrote, Hardball. You might be familiar with this picture, the cover of the book, Hardball. Um, I guess actually that looks backwards to you, my name, Andrew Waits. Uh, the You may have seen the picture if you're looking at my blog. And my blog is on my website at hardball-andywaits.com. And it's all centered around the book that I wrote about over 20 years ago, actually. And what I did is when I first wrote the book, I was very excited about it. I was very happy about the way it came out. I spent about 2 years in writing the book, virtually every day, every night, especially after I got off work. I would be in my garage office in front of my computer, just typing away at the story. And the interesting thing is about how I started to write and why I started to write what I wrote is, frankly, um, I don't know how it happened. I just was turning 40 years old and decided that I wanted to make a profound statement to the world. I didn't know exactly what the statement was going to be, and I didn't really know how I was going to make the statement. I thought about poetry that I have dabbled in a lot throughout my writing life. I thought about short stories. And then somehow I came to the conclusion that I was going to write a novel. And I set my goal as writing a best selling novel. Now, I didn't realize uh, what that really means to write a best selling novel. And I've learned that the hardest thing in writing a best selling novel is not really the writing of the novel itself. Because I think that this novel that I have written is a a best selling novel. Okay? But the trick is how do I get it into the market? And I wish I could figure out how to get this to look straight rather than backward. But I don't know if I can figure that out. Okay? I'll have to work on that. Anyway, the point is when I first wrote the book, and I was very happy about the way it came out, very excited about it. I thought for sure it was going to do well. And so what I did is I spent probably close to a year in submitting my synopsis and sample chapters when they asked them for to numerous agents, numerous literary agents to them, and uh, most of them were ignored, and the ones that I did get were rejected. I did get, I remember one big agency that seemed to be interested, and I followed up with them, and they just sort of dropped off for some reason. The bottom line is, I got very little response to it, and the reason I think is that, I'm not the only one that's submitting synopsis to agents. They get swarmed with them. They don't have enough staff to actually read a lot of them, and you just they're not going to get anything that where an agent is going to take them unless you know someone, unless you have a connection with someone in a literary agency. So I came to the decision, and it was the only thing I could do, was to self-publish. And I did that with Ex Libris. I spent hundreds of dollars, if not close to $1,000, to do that. And that's what I got out of it was this. This is the hardcover. I also have a paperback. I got a number of paperbacks when I got it. And I thought, okay, now we're going to go somewhere. But you know what? it still was just sitting there. And it's on there now at Amazon.com. If you're reading my blog, okay, chances are you're interested in the book. You're interested in buying the book. That is the purpose of my blog, frankly, is to write about the book, summarizing it, giving you certain excerpts about it. I've actually written so much about it now. I must have at least 20 to 50 different posts that I've put into the blog, and I'm getting kind of concerned that I'm giving away too much, so that you won't be interested in the book anymore. I don't think so, because I write everything I write is about only 2 pages of the entire book in most chapters. I'm actually getting a little lighter on it now. I only do like 5 or 6 chapters as I go through it. Um, so I'm here today just to introduce myself, to let you know let me get back to when I started writing the book. I think, as I mentioned to you, when I first sat down at my computer to write my best-selling novel, I had no idea what I was going to write about. And I had no outline, no plan, no guidance, absolutely nothing in my mind as to what I was going to write about. Just so happened at that time was the Major League Baseball season was opening up. I'm a deeply devoted baseball fan. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to have a lot of baseball in this book. So I started off with the subject of baseball and introduced the main protagonist. Bob Brinkston is his name. And I introduced him and who he was, and he was and is a very deeply devoted baseball fanatic. He not only loves the sport, he plays the sport at 40 years old or so, and he plays it in the. He played it at first when I introduced him. He was playing in the over 30 leagues. Even though he was over 40, he was a good enough player to play in the over 30 leagues. And then later on in the novel, in the story, he went into the over 40 leagues. And throughout the story, talks about baseball a lot. And there's one excerpt I have in the story where he's in the middle of a game, and I get into the details of the baseball game. One thing that I remember writing about with a lot of specifics was the battle, a typical battle between the pitcher and the batter. The batter typically stands close to the plate, as I wrote, so that the curveball will have less effect on him. The pitcher doesn't want that to happen, so what the pitcher does is he'll throw pitches close to the batter to get him off the plate. Now, of course, the pitcher can only go so far in doing that, because if he pitches too many that are off the plate, he's going to walk the guy, and he doesn't want to do that. So there's a constant battle that I wrote about, and throughout the whole story, I would say I recently wrote a post on the blog as to how many chapters did I actually mention baseball and say anything about baseball. And it turned out that more than half of them, of the 19 chapters, I did have mentions, sometimes rather extensive mentions, of baseball, sometimes just a little bit, but something always about baseball throughout these stories. So that's what I started writing about, was baseball. Okay? After the moment I got started on this book, it was like magic, because I never even really thought about what I was going to write after I started because whatever I wrote after what I wrote before just made logical sense. Okay? For instance, let me just start off with the first chapter in the book. I really don't even have to read this because you can imagine, I know it by heart. The first chapter is Bob. I introduce him as the ATF agent, the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms agent of the U.S. Treasury, and he is the leader of the anti-domestic cult uh, part of the agency. And I go through and I talk about a baseball that he has. I'm not going to get into the details again because I don't want to give you too much to ruin the story for you. And that first chapter, somehow, I got him into a situation that involved hostages in a meatpacking plant. Now, I don't know why I chose that, except maybe I was thinking about the end of it when I did do that. I really don't know. But they were in the meatpacking plant, and this was a radical group that was a vegetarian group and was holding the the um, the management in in custody and as hostages, and they were making demands. Bob went to the facility with his group and was, of course, in charge of it, as he always is on anything he goes on, because he's recognized and respected by everyone as a leader. And to make a long story short, it ended in just the way it somehow ended, with getting a meat hook to go right into the enemy of his neck, right through it. And he did it, and he did that by way of a baseball that he threw right at the where the top of the hook met the track. Made a perfect pitch, and he threw it fast, and it made the hook race towards, and it wasn't very far from the enemy. He made it race down the track with a hook right into his neck, and I deeply describe the blood and the bone and the tissue that came out of his neck, and I really, went into a deep description of the blood. And which reminds me, throughout this story, I focused a lot on blood, okay, on detailed, specific descriptions of the ways that the enemy was being eliminated. And I, you know, I think that the things that I said and that I wrote about the blood were frankly more of an art, a piece of art, than they were just terror and being scared of it. I really wrote that so that someone would not be scared of it, but would be more fascinated by what the details of the deaths were. So anyway, that chapter ended with Bob thinking to himself how much he cherished that baseball, and how he would be and he hold on to that baseball wherever he went for the rest of his life. And that's how it ended on chapter 1. So then I go, okay, chapter 2. Well, chapter 2, I decided I was going to introduce the next protagonist, and her name was Emily Sanchez. And the two of them met at a coffee shop, and they were discussing retaining Bob as an expert in and a case that Emily was working on. Emily was a successful lawyer, and she had a big injury case that involved a father and a son. The father was taking his shotgun out of the case to show his son and show him how to clean it and use it and introduce him, to the firearm. And by accident, the gun went off and went right into the heart of his son. And the safety mechanism was on, but it didn't work. So Emily took the case, and it was a hard case to prove that the gun was defective and that the gun manufacturer was liable for the death. And Emily had found out about Bob, about what a great reputation he had as an expert on cases. He always either won the case outright if it ever went to trial, or it's settled for a good case, for a good result of the case, to always won, essentially. And the meeting between these two was one which the electricity and the attractiveness was present right away. And I go into big details of that. A big part of this story is sex. Okay, I also had numerous descriptions of the sexual encounter between Bob and Emily. Detailed, specific, erotic, but not pornographic. I made sure to control it so much that it was a meaningful, significant merger that they had. And I had it in most cases in a very natural outside environment. Okay, so that's one of the highlights of the story too. Okay, and then just to keep it going, let's see, chapter 2 ended. Okay, let's see, chapter 2 ended. Let me see. Well, let's see, chapter. Well, I can't believe I can't remember this. Hold on. Anyways, I don't. You know what? I'm not gonna. I don't have to go through the specifics. Somehow, each chapter that ended had language in it that was very profound, and I did this on purpose. Very profound, serious language that it only made sense to do the next chapter. Each chapter fit the way perfectly based on the previous chapter. Okay? You will enjoy these characters. Okay? You will enjoy them, love them, cherish them, care for them so much. Bob and Emily are just two of them. And you'll love them so much that your mind will fantasize that they are actually real people. That's right. I'll tell you one thing, when I wrote them and I created them, and as I created them, and as I guided them along in the story, they became real to me, especially Bob and Emily, that those two are the main characters. I really believed that they were with me and part of me, and I actually conversed with them in my mind throughout the story. So the bottom line is that's how I think, and what makes Hardball so special is the characters. and I recently wrote a post in my blog about that subject. You might want to check it out. Hardball dash Andy Waits. That's ANDYWEITZ.com. Check it out. Let me know what you think about it through the communication box. You'll see where you can write comments. Let me know what you think about the blog. If you buy the book, let me know what you think about the book, and write a review on Amazon too, if you get that ambitious, and we'll go from there. And I'll get back to you soon with other comments and other things to tell you about the book and the way and why I wrote it and what kept me going in writing it. And we will talk with you soon. Have a great day and a great night, and we'll talk with you soon. Bye-bye. I don't know why the exit button is not working, but